great to have all of you again on Tempest Open Minds. And I hope that we will have a very good session today also. As you know that Tempest Open Minds is today in its 13th session. We started off on the 18th of April. And since then, we have already had 12 sessions which have been addressed by very eminent people. And we do hope that we'll be able to continue this in the future also. We started Tempest Open Minds primarily as an internal knowledge enhancement program. But after we opened up, it has been very, very successful. Till date, over 1,200 people have already participated in our Open Minds. And we are today very delighted to have with us Mr. Siddharth Vishwakarma. He has over 8 years of experience in communication and especially in digital marketing. And he has handled many, many brands, both as a person from the agency side as well as from the client's side. And the interesting thing about him is that he tries to marry culture as well as digital technology to create campaigns which are very, very relevant to our target segment, and also uses data and instinct to go ahead with campaigns. So we are very delighted to have him with us today. And before I hand over the session to Mr. Siddharth, there will be a question answer session at the end of the talk which Siddharth will be giving. So it's over to Siddharth.
So thanks for the introduction. So today's session primarily will focus, of course, on digital marketing, but primarily on the content side of digital marketing. The digital marketing I'll be touching upon and we'll be focusing on that. While media part definitely is, a part of it, but in this session I won't be touching that because that will go into a lot of numbers and I'm sure nobody wants to hear numbers right now on a Saturday morning. So we'll keep it a freewheeling session. Please feel free to pitch in, give some inputs, have some questions. Of course, we'll have a session 40-45 minutes. I'll take only to go through the presentation that I've small prepared. I know presentation sound on a Saturday morning again, as I said, but it's fun. I'm telling you, it's fun. I've tried to make it fun. So see. As Turav already mentioned that digital marketing has been my forte. So I'll quickly start off where does digital marketing currently stand in the current scheme of things. From an industry perspective, overall digital marketing has been picking for sure, and everyone knows it because everyone's going on phones, everyone's on Zoom, everyone's of course work from home. Apart from that, the infrastructure given by the government of India, of course, is now also propelling the digital ownership. The penetration of internet has increased. We've got multiple platforms. We started off in India, as of course, with Facebook, and then came in, of course, your Instagrams and WhatsApps and LinkedIn's and Twitter of the world. These platforms enabled a lot of conversation with people. While traditional marketing was always there, but it was a one-way communication, and one-way communication definitely doesn't involve people. The moment this power came in, the democratization of technology came in, the moment that happened, I think it opened up a lot of things for people. It opened the fact that I could share my views online. I could share anything which I used to share in a smaller group. So now things have become more dialogue oriented. The people also have become a lot in the engagement part of scheme of things in respect to the brands. The brands have become really, really sensitive and rightly so, because the moment you put out a communication and the other second you get a feedback that it's a trash product, it is a shitty product, or it's a great product. So you get a lot of mixed sentiments from people, and that's what drives digital, I think. And the kind of engagement that it has given, the kind of time spent that it has given on the screens and multiple screens, it's going beyond this whole imagination of what could happen to the technology, and once the 3G, 4G, and 2G and 5G, all these things kick in. So this is from an industry perspective. The spends currently from an overall industry still stands at an average of 10 to 15%, while this is definitely growing. And just in the last 3-4 months, work from home has propelled this particular spend. People have the brands have literally spent almost 20% of the overall marketing spends, 20-25% also to an extent on digital marketing, because people are spending more and more time on digital. So, having said that, it brings its own challenges. It has its own merits. It has its own good and bad. The good part is, of course, everyone has an opinion. Everyone wants to share it. The bad part is the brands have to be really, really careful of what they get into. Even one small statement from a brand could really hamper the situation to them. I'll quickly start off with what drives digital, and especially from a content perspective. See, it's important to understand where does digital stand right now, because it's only a marketing channel. It's nothing else. It's one more outdoor or one more or a TV medium or a print medium. It's only one medium that we're still talking about here. But it's interesting to know that this particular medium has a lot of other dimensions to it. For example, a TV, you would want to push down a 30-seconder to someone's throat, and you would want to say that, watch this TVC. And you have to. The max you can do is switch channels, and again, you get one more advertisement there. But here in digital, it's pretty challenging. Only because of the fact that if I don't like something, I don't like something. I can get off that. I can skip the screen. I can get off the screen. I can close the screen. I don't like it. I can give the complaint. I can give the feedback right there and then. So from a digital consumption standpoint, I think culture becomes really, really important. And when I talk about culture is nothing but a set of behaviors or ideas or customs that we share all together. It's important to understand TV or a print or anything else doesn't really seep into the culture of today, while digital marketing does. And that's where it's driving so many conversations for so many brands and people. I'm not only talking about brands, I'm also talking about people who are influencers who have their brand of their own. So for them also it's great. And I'm sure there are a lot of people in this particular session who are influencers or who've got good following on multiple platforms. Now, culture is a very important thing when it comes to digital, because it drives and fuels insights for brands. It's important to understand that today's great content makers, they usually primarily focus on the culture side of things. The new language and the new lingo of binge eating, binge watching, staying up late at night, not going out but delivering food at home. All these kind of behaviors have set a culture within all of us together. While there were, of course, some cues of culture earlier, but now the definition of those culture dimensions have changed. It's become more vocal because we've got power in our hands, we've got phones in our hands, and it's become so much easier for people to communicate. So it's also important to understand that in the current scheme of things, digital is a very it's a very risky business as well, because the moment you get your brand into a digital space, you need to be very sure of what you want to speak about, and you need to have a voice. So from a culture standpoint, it's important to understand how we communicate with each other, how we exchange communication with each other, and through, of course, multiple platforms. And the most closest platform that we can think of right now is WhatsApp. So you think of an emoji. You think of an emoji which is just lying there on the WhatsApp. It speaks thousands of words. Earlier we used to text, we used to, of course, do multiple things. Now with one emoji, you can emote a lot of things and many things. And it's interesting to understand how did we reach here, because just one emoji giving so many emotions is fantastic. I think in my perspective, it's fantastic. Because you're only exchanging one emoji and you're speaking so many things about it, right? But it's important to understand how did we reach here. So there has been definitely some learning curve that people have, traversed over the period of time, because we've gone all digital, so we understand all the platforms, and if you see, there is a consistency on all the platforms in terms of consumption of the content. Now that's where it drives a lot of learning curve for all of us. And I'll give you a small example. Tinder as an app, first it came out with a swipe left and a swipe right, wherein people were not aware of, we could also, do such a thing wherein we can also choose people doing left and right, etc. But that learning curve of swiping was already established by Apple. So we knew that yes, there is a functionality, there is a behavior set in people wherein they could swipe stuff up and down or right and left and etc. So that learning curve was started by Apple, but it eventually got into apps, and then the entire behavior of swiping up and down and right and left came in. So it's important to understand these nuances when we talk about digital, because we interact with digital technologies every day. So when I say that those emojis speak thousands of words, it's important to understand also that yes, it brings a lot of other things together with it. And I'll give you an example to it. So we reached here when we started emoting in the form of emojis, and we could not speak 10 or 15 or 20 words, but we still emoted ourselves with that one emoji. From there, we went ahead and also figured out, what do we know exactly and what have we learned. So all of this put together, I had put a small model together in terms of measuring, or in terms of finding out how exactly the content works and what are the different legs to it. The first is, of course, the culture, because it fuels a lot of insights that brands drive. The second C. So I call it the 4 C's right now. The second is the content, which gives a tremendous amount of shape to insights. The third is the context, because it's important to put things into the context, in the right context. It's important to put it there. Otherwise, then it goes really off in terms of understanding what I'm trying to say. And the fourth C is the channel, putting it at the right space and the right platform. Now, I'll just deep dive into culture a bit. However we behave inside office, outside office, what we see, what we learn, what we react, what we observe, how we do things around us. If there are, if there's a trend going on Twitter, let's say, people have already latched onto that. So those are the kind of observations people do. Those are the kind of communication people want to be a part of. So that becomes culture. Inside office, if you are, appreciating someone, that's a culture. If you're outside office, if you are, sharing your grievances with someone, of course, that's a culture. On social media, if you are sharing a similar point of view, you become a set of people in the terms of community, and that's where the culture comes from. So there are very interesting nuances of culture that we've seen, and we've seen across the brands also picking up. I'll give you an example, a small example, and I've tried to keep all the examples very Indian examples, because just to get the context and just to get the insights right and get a better understanding. Zomato has been doing great content in the past, and they usually stay true to their entire brand purpose, which is food. But they bring in a good amount of culture into it. They bring in a sense of relatability with people. because food connects a lot of people, and we've been doing it for so many years. We've been inviting a lot of people at our home, guests earlier as well. The moment digital happened, it all shifted online. Young marketers, young people of today have now tried to make conversations there, and that's where Zomato has been doing some great content. They've been mixing a lot of culture nuances with their brand. Because a small example I'll give you, biryani was still a biryani 10 years before, but suddenly it erupted into so much of brand love. It's so much of I would call biryani a brand right now, because it is a brand. People love it. And the moment it went online, people just erupted with their kind of love that they poured on biryani, right? I mean, we could not find I did not know personally that so many people like biryani. I mean, that simply skyrocketed the entire conversations, and people started using those analogies of biryani and what you love with other things as well. So if you love something, you are biryani to me. It's as equivalent as that, and especially on digital. The second part is the content. So once you get a good culture, you get good insights from culture, and it's important to get a good insight, because a good insight only drives a better idea. It's important to also understand that in today's scenario, in digital perspective, it becomes a little gimmicky when you don't stay true to the brand values. You don't stay true to the insight. Then it only becomes one of the things that a brand has done. So it's important to understand where the culture sits and where is my brand relevant in that culture. If Zoom today has become one of the biggest thing, it's also because of the fact a lot of people have been talking about it. MS Teams is still there, but we don't talk about MS Teams so much, but we talk about Zoom calls a lot. Zoom calls, we are there, in the morning, right until in the night, etc. So it's important to understand how these brands have become so relevant in today's life. So it's the culture and the insights. I would say that it's really important, and it's important for digital agencies and digital marketers to understand good insights, because the moment you seclude yourself from a great insight or a great culture, then you are only looking at a very gimmicky sort of a content on digital for a brand. You're not going exactly into the brains of people to understand what drives them. If you don't know what drives them, of course, we will not be able to get better content or the best content for us. The second part where I move is content, which is a quest for a great idea. Culture fuels insights. We've already spoken about it, and it basically results into joining multiple memory structures into people's minds, from people's mind, and creating a great idea. So first, of course, important to understand culture. Second is to have a great idea. Now, how do we get great idea? It's easy to say to get a great idea, but it's all the more very difficult. The moment you get an insight from a culture standpoint, it's important to understand where your brand sits in that particular space of a user. When he's culturally involved in a lot of things, it's important to understand, it's important to also identify where does my brand sits from a relevancy perspective. Now, for example, I'll give you a small example and one of the great, I think, case studies in terms of content marketing, which is...
Sorry to interrupt you. Actually, we could not see the screen. Is your screen on, like you're presenting it, right?
Just a sec.
Yeah, it's visible now.
Is it?
Yeah.
No, it's not visible, Siddharth. We can only see you, not the presentation.
Okay, just a second. So it's asking me to quit right now, and I don't want to. So I'll quickly get on with the
Then we
session.
can, you can send us your presentation. We will circulate it to all the participants later on. Okay?
Great,
Yeah.
great. Okay, so yeah, so for the quest for a greater idea, so it's important to understand a brand where it sits in the relevancy part of all the culture, and a great idea for that is Zomato, of course, a great brand that has been built online primarily. Of course, it's got other support, TV medium support and print support and etc. But it's primarily built online, and we're seeing far more, I think, greater brands who are getting online and building their brand. Uh, there's one more brand which I would like to talk about, which is Swiggy. Swiggy does really good content in terms of connecting with people, in terms of getting out there and digitally and culturally getting relevant into people's life. Swiggy and Zomato, they are these kind of, you see, it depends on category to category, because these kind of brands have to remain top of the mind every time. But if you talk about a brand like a Colgate, of course, it gets activated in spurts, because that's where the relevancy for them also becomes a little higher in terms of, let's say, a topical moment when I talk about, let's say, a Raksha Bandhan or a 15th August or a 1st January, right? So it's important to understand how categories also work, because Swiggy and Zomato have been doing great work, and consistently we've been seeing a lot of good content from them, because they want to keep a top of the mind for everyone. So it's important to understand where do we sit right now on the content, on the idea part of it, which means that if culturally we are behaving in a certain way, then it's important to identify where does the brand sit. Now I'll quickly go to the third C, which is the context. Now it's a really interesting example that I encountered recently, which is after once this pandemic unfortunately started, there was this conversations of saving lives, of course, staying at home, and all of this. So you see beautifully how the context changes to people. 5 months before, I think we were looking at couch potatoes as one of the most useless people, right? I mean, brands have tried to tell them that yes, don't be couch potatoes, don't get up and do something. A lot of inspirational brands trying to inspire and motivate people have been trying to say, get up and do something. But suddenly now the couch potatoes have become the lifesavers. I mean, they are seen as one of the people who are dedicating something and doing something for the society. So you see how the context changes of the conversation. If you put the right context, then things come into a perspective. And taking the right content, the right context, just spins around the entire narrative of what a brand or what anyone is trying to say. The fourth C that I want to talk about is the channel. Picking the right channel. Now you've got multiples and hundreds of channels that are currently existing, from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, and LinkedIn, and whatnot. But it's important to understand where your audience sits and which channel do we pick in. Now every channel, if you see from a traditional point of view, it's got everything. It's got every stage or funnel of marketing addressed. For example, it's got awareness. Facebook has awareness into the entire scheme of things, of targeting people and getting into the awareness zone. The consideration part of it. So every platform offers a lot of formats in terms of reaching out to the people on multiple platforms. But it's important to also understand that these channels are just channels. Ultimately, the content is the king. If the content lacks anywhere in terms of becoming culturally relevant, in terms of getting the right idea, the right context to the entire picture, then the channel also falls flat. I've seen a lot of great films doing really bad only because of the fact that they chose bad channel. One of the examples that I would like to give here is Google. I mean, Google does great content, long form content, if I were to speak, on, and primarily they do it on a long format stuff, on a long format duration, because they want to bring out a story. Now, the great part of Google is, while all the Facebooks and Twitter of the world have got into a lot of controversy in terms of privacy, data privacy, data regulations, the kind of data that they collect at the back end, Google has still maintained and tried to maintain itself, maintain some distance from these controversial subjects, and that's that's what's been great about Google. On one hand, they've been battling a lot of data privacy battles, and the other hand, they've been also touching people's lives through a lot of great content. I don't know how many people have seen it, but there was I think last year, I think Google came out, was between a relation between India and Pakistan. Two granddads basically used to stay together near Pakistan, and then of course after the 1947 happened, then they parted ways. One went to India, one went to the Pakistan, and I mean they beautifully brought out the story of two people getting divided by XYZ reasons, and but still being able to connect through Google, and that's where the relevancy comes in for them. I mean, there were of course shots in the film wherein a person, where his daughter was seen typing on let's say a google.com, saying that where is Pakistan, how is where is this particular place in Pakistan, how do I find it? So the relevancy that they built in that film was fantastic. They did not openly and overtly say that yes, we are there, please buy our product. And that's what the beauty of the content is nowadays. For brands, it becomes really important to understand what ticks the user and also what kind of content it works. Now, the content on digital doesn't work on in your face advertising. You can't say that yes, I'm here, I've got these many USPs and benefits, please buy my product because it's the best from the others. Till the time people don't have a rationale of associating themselves with a particular brand, with particular characteristics of the brand, they won't be able to own it. They won't own it, because see, if something goes on social media, if something goes on digital, that means that it happened, and people have been talking about and have been sharing a lot about what they consume, and that's where the dialogue things of digital marketing also steps in. So it's also very important to also understand that the content is not necessarily please buy my product. It's giving them the right reasons to fall in love with your product or to fall in love with your services. Till the time the brand doesn't educate or give some kind of benefits to the user, and those benefits, I'm not only talking about 8 megapixel camera or 8 GB RAM, but I'm talking about the kind of the kind of characteristics that it gets along, the kind of imagery it gets to the user. If I want to own, or if I am having a Red Bull today, people see me as the guy who lives on the edge, because nobody said that yes, I would like to have a Red Bull because I'm having a fine day. People either were tired or they were involved in some kind of adventure sports, or they were feeling a little more, their adrenaline was so high that people wanted to consume this, and to be seen that yes, I'm consuming this, I kind of get into that particular tribe. Now it's interesting to also understand how do these tribes work, because the moment I have 15 or 20 people liking a similar thing, it becomes a community. And and these communities usually drive everything because they are the first adopters, and these ones are followed by a lot of people who are who are basically being aspirational of trying to reach there, and that's where the influencer marketing also comes in. It's important to understand that communities drive adoption, and especially the ones who are the experimenters, who experiment a lot, who would want to be seen as different people. And once these tribes are identified by these brands, it becomes evident that yes, you would want to associate your brand imagery with those brand characteristics that those are excluded by these influencers or the so-called the new age guys, the new adopters, because that's how it does, right? That's what happens in a traditional marketing, because you get some adopters early on, and then of course you've got the ones who are catching up, and of course the laggards at the end of it. So this brings in one more aspect of digital marketing, which is influencer marketing. It's interesting to understand right now because in Indian context, it's majorly entertainment. If you see from Bhuvan Bam to Ashish Chanchlani to all these guys who are making good, humorous and great content, if you see the kind of people who are there with the maximum followership, we can still sense that yes, majority of the Indians like entertainment. But there are still pockets of smaller tribes that are present within that particular set of the universe, which is people who like Netflix, who like to binge on it. That's one tribe, and of course it has other characteristics. Then you've got other people who are consuming XYZ things. For example, let's say I want to be seen as the guy who takes a lot of risks, does a startup, takes a Red Bull in my hand. I'm on the go all the time. I post stuff on social media, which is clutter breaking, which is totally new age, which no one has heard about. I'm also taking regular updates from Google, from Facebook, and all these places. And I'm saying that I'm updated, totally updated on these kind of things. So that's one of the kind of tribes that we're talking about here for the brands. These tribes usually are the ones who drive the brand, and it's very important to also not dilute a brand communication and make content not for only these people but for other ones as well. So that's where the channel sits in. So those are the 4 C's that I wanted to touch upon. One, I'll just quickly go over it, which first is culture, which fuels the insights. The second is the content, which gives a shape to the insight. The third is the context, which if you put it in the right context, people will be able to understand, because that's how our memory structures work. That's how we are built in, because we learn over the period of time, and then we identify that yes, it's there visually, and I could understand and interpret that yes, if it's there, what does it mean? And a very simple example of it was an emoji, when I started off with a simple emoji example. And the fourth is the channel. Putting the right channel into the entire communication is very important. So those are the 4 C's that I wanted to touch upon, because recently when I was trying to make this model, this model of 4 C's, I got this almost around 1.5 months back, and I've been thinking about it a lot. And then I thought, I think it's the right platform for all of us to also go through it. And of course, it's open for feedback, it's open for inputs, it's open for questions. And that's where the beauty of digital stands, because honestly, you can't have you can't have one simple recipe for digital. You don't have. It's always test and learn. And the more you test, the more you learn, the more you unlearn, and of course provide the feedback, and again go back to the same thing, giving to people. That's how digital works. So I will just go now to apart from all these 4 C's, I'll stress on the 4th C now, which is the channel. Now, how do I identify where's my audience? How do I identify, where's my audience sitting, and whom do I reach out to, and where do I reach out to them? Because a lot of platforms give you a lot of data and a data-led targeting approaches. For example, I'll give you a small example on Facebook, which has the highest number of people right now in India. They have already started providing targeting options in terms of interests. So in traditional marketing, what used to happen and what still happens is, if you have a small cohort of users, you would still look at 18 to 24 or a 25 to 44 or a 45 plus or a 50 plus. But on digital, that's where the beauty is, because when I talk about the tribes, these tribes carry a lot of other characteristics to it. And that's what Facebook has been reaping, because these characteristics are now infused into the targeting options of Facebook. Let's say if I want to, reach out to people who are there on Facebook, but are interested into, let's say, home recipes or do-it-yourself recipes or cooking or are chefs. So if you closely understand this is now not anymore about the age targeting. It's more about the interest targeting. And that's where communities and tribes become really, really important. And that's what these platforms have been able to achieve, to target people basis their interest and not only their age. Because I know for a fact, a 44 or a 45 or a 50-year-old guy is still interested in adventure sports. Probably he's cycling. He's bought all the up-to-date gears with him, all the better gears that are there now in India. I still know a few people who are 25 or 26-year-old but still consume old songs. So a brand like a Carvaan brand becomes really, really relevant to them. So if you closely see, there's not one definition that yes, 18 to let's say 30-year-olds will have this kind of communication served to them, and that's where the beauty of digital is. They're totally out and out interest led. I can also reach out to a guy who's a 45-year-old with my brand as one of the cycling brands. Reach out to them because I can sell it to them because they like cycling. Also a 25-year-old, because he's just started his journey into fitness. I can still reach out to that guy and I can still sell my product there. But where do we find this kind of audience? One answer is, if it's not on social media, it didn't happen. Another quotes that I keep hearing. If it's not on social media, it did not happen at all. That means that says two things about it. First, social has become a part of our lives. We can't live without social, and that includes WhatsApp. Please don't exclude it, because that's where we make maximum content. And when we say it didn't happen, that means you would want to register that particular event. Which means that social media is a place, of course, for consumption, for sharing, but also registering the fact that I like this and I don't like this. So it's a clear-cut yes or a no. There's no standing in between. And if you see closely on multiple platforms, people have got different and varied views. And those varied views are, of course, because of the kind of different opinions people have. So you've got multiple platforms. Of course, the user journeys have become so complex nowadays that you've got outdoor, you've got TV, you've got print, and you've got WhatsApp, and you've got Facebook, and you've got Twitter, you've got Instagram, you've got LinkedIn, you've got everything. But how do we know what platform to pick? So I would just like to go to the crux of the story, which is the know your audience and what ticks them. Do they like football, or do they like Ludo? Do they like chess or an entertainment or binge eating or Netflix? Put them in a tribe. If you can tribe them, if you can, get your brand, if you can get our brand to, get these tribes and get relevant to these tribes, we'll be able to sell them. We'll be able to get people what they want. But it's also important to understand, what do we want to do? Do we want to inspire? Like a brand wants to inspire people. Brand wants to engage. Brand wants to entertain, or brand wants to educate. So it's important to also put in milestones of where we want to achieve, what we want to achieve, and where do we want to go after 3 months. And as I said, it's a test and learn, and it's a process. And there are a few things that I will just wrap up. I think we are already, I think, in 15 minutes into the last 15 minutes, I think, into it, and we'll take some questions. So first is make milestones. Please be clear of what you want to achieve, what the brand wants to achieve for the next 3 months or 6 months or 1 year. Please don't forget to listen. Please don't forget to, continuously learn and listen and, provide feedback. That's great in digital, because things change a lot within a span of time. And as I gave you an example on the couch potato part, this just completely spins around the narrative. It's important to also stand for something. If you're on digital, you can't stand, you can't take a lukewarm stand. And I'm not talking about controversial stuff. I'm talking about, being relevant to someone, being important for someone, and have a voice. If you don't have a voice, then it goes into everywhere. People will still consider you that you don't stand for nothing, and they will still not want to, converse with you. The third is creating a dialogue. Create a dialogue, talk to people online, do some research. While we traditionally have, let's say 40 or 1,000 people on TV screens, which extrapolates itself into a much larger chunk of audience understanding, which BARC does, right? But from a social perspective, digital perspective, it's great because you can still, get back online just by putting, let's say, Insta stories. And that's a great way to start off. That's a great way to take feedback from people. And of course, as I said, it's a process. It's a continuous process. You need to keep learning, keep churning out content, keep seeing what works and what doesn't. If there is a small example, if there is a person in the banner, or if there is an ingredient in the banner, which one works best with our audience? You never know what clicks, basically. And I'll just take 2 more minutes and complete, just put some case in point. One of the brilliant campaigns that I've loved recently came from Nike, which was Dada Ding. It was why do I say that it was a great campaign? Of course, it was done by a great brand, and it's got its legacy. But they picked up really great 4 C's of what I talked about, and I'll just link it quickly. First is the culture, which is music, of course, is an integral part of working out and staying fit. So people knew that, brand people knew that, yes, of course, music is what binds people. Second is the great content. They wanted to showcase athletes, but badass, totally. The third is the context. The context here becomes Deepika Padukone, because Deepika Padukone was there in that particular content piece, but she wasn't at the forefront, and that's what makes it a great content, because brands were still pulling in a lot of athletes who were already famous. But Dada Ding didn't do that. And if you get a chance, please do YouTube search on Dada Ding Nike after this. And the third is the channel. What they did brilliantly was they took that content on one of the biggest Bollywood congregations of all time, which is IFA. So they launched it on IFA, wherein Deepika Padukone was present, and Deepika Padukone, of course, her channels also on social media, on IFA, on the stage, was launched. So it was a great piece of content which worked on and ticked all the boxes in terms of getting the content right, culture right, context right, and also the channel right. You let me know if you're running short of time, because I think we're already into.
No, I think it's interesting. Please continue.
Sure.
Nobody has left the meeting so far, so that's great.
Glad. Okay, so the second piece that I want to talk about is my brand, because I did some good stuff. Hopefully you like it. There was one piece that we did recently, and that was an out and out FOC. When I say FOC, it's free of cost. It's called the earned media that we call it. We used to call it back in 2015-16. So with Chyawanprash, I'll talk about the brand Dabur Chyawanprash. What recently we did was, so recently what happened was, Veerdas, I was sitting on a Sunday, and please do check out the kind of agility that it requires here. And I'm kind of proud of that. We all are kind of proud of that. The entire team is proud of that. See, I was sitting on a Sunday evening, and I saw Veerdas's new stand-up comedy, which was Veerdas for India. And I switched on Netflix and I started watching it. The moment I started, he started talking about Parle Ji and Chyawanprash. And I was like, Chyawanprash, why is he talking about Chyawanprash and Parle Ji now? And that conversation was so interesting that he brought all the memories of Parle Ji and Chyawanprash and how these brands, have been relevant, but no one knows about it. He said that Chyawanprash, no one knows what's there in the Chyawanprash. I mean, my dadi, my nani, my dad, my mother all say that yes, please have Chyawanprash, but किसी को पता ही नहीं है Chyawanprash में है क्या. I mean, we don't know what happens to Chyawanprash when you eat Chyawanprash. बस ये बोलते हैं Chyawanprash खा लो. He also talked about Parle Ji, one of the first brands that he talked about. Then 15-20 minutes into the entire stand-up, he talks about Chyawanprash and कैसे मेरी मम्मी मेरे पीछे पीछे लेके भागती थी कि यार Chyawanprash खा लो, एक चम्मच तो खा लो, एक चम्मच तो खा लो, and right in the morning she used to say कि please Chyawanprash खा लो. So I think it's a great category ownership that we can take. While Dabur Chyawanprash, of course, right now is the market leader, but you need to keep continuously reinventing yourself and also being relevant to the new audience. So we thought, firstly, Veerdas as a face is a great content, target audience, because we want to be relevant to people now who need immunity. And this happened just before pandemic. This work from home started and COVID started. So when he talked about Chyawanprash, then we thought, I turned to the agency and I was like, I think we should do something. I think we should own this particular space of what he's talking about. Because when he's saying that he doesn't know what exactly Chyawanprash is and what ingredients are that, I think we should educate him and we should start with him. So what we did was on Instagram, and of course we picked up Instagram intentionally because he's very big on Instagram. We picked it up. We educated him on the kind of ingredients that we have on Chyawanprash. We also made sure within a couple of days' time, we get a big, large box of all the Dabur Chyawanprash, all the flavors together, and we sent it to him. And he was nice enough to put it on his social media to say that, yes, now I finally know what Dabur Chyawanprash consists of, what ingredients does it have. And it's interesting to know, after that, we also launched a new campaign across digital, wherein we found out that, yes, people still don't know what Chyawanprash is. People still don't know what ingredients are there. So we still need to educate people on the other 41 ingredients or 35 or 30 ingredients that we have, apart from mulethi and giloy. And people, top of the mind, we all know कि giloy hai, pudina hoga, mulethi hogi, and all that. So two things happened here. One is the speed at which we identified the content opportunity. The second piece is getting all of it entirely earned media. We almost earned to the tune of 1 CR through this exercise. So that's a good example of real-time marketing and keeping a very close eye on what happens around you, because ultimately someone must be talking about your brand. Someone definitely must be talking about it. If they're not talking about your brand, that means you need to make them talk. And the last, of course, the piece that I've already covered is the Zomato content. That I think it's a great content piece that they've been doing. The one thing again I will focus on is the content still remains the king, because there are two examples I'll cite here. One is Amul. Now Amul, of course, has a girl. It still rocks on digital. Why? Because it's great content. Some time back, Zomato also did a great outdoor advertising. Google also did it, in fact, right, where people started clicking pictures of the outdoor hoardings and they put it up on social media. So I think the content still wins. Either it could be on any marketing channel, but the content has to be the king. The content has to strike a chord. The content has to bring those insights and bring those culturally relevant things to people. So yes, that's where I'll wrap up, and I'm okay with taking questions for the next 5-10 minutes if you allow.
So that was great, Siddharth. And personally, I felt that without the presentation, it sounded and felt a little much more personal than if you had a slide going left, right, and center. So I think it was really great. So I think let's open up for questions. Whoever has any questions, please unmute yourself and ask a question one at a time. Okay.
Hi, Siddharth.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Hi, I'm Varun. I have one small question. Siddharth, you talked about the positive when people are talking good about your brand. How do you tackle that? Would you like to say something when people talk negative about your brand, and how do you tackle it on digital? Because as you said, content. So people talk negative and it spreads like wildfire on the internet about your brand. So any particular, would you like to touch on that point?
I think, yeah, it's a good question. I think because we've been still talking about a lot of positives, but there are a lot of brands who face a lot of flack on that. See, you need to understand how your consumers react and behave, and also the kind of position that you're coming from. If you're coming from a market leader perspective, it becomes very important that you don't get into a zone of I don't care for my consumers because I'm a brand, because ultimately people will keep still posting negative about your brand, and if you don't care, it will pick up definitely. Now it's important to also understand we've got plenty of tools on how to understand, and I will not get into it right now, but it's important to understand that these people will still have negative reviews about you. People will still complain. There'll always be complaints. See, it's a human tendency to complain more and appreciate less. It's a human tendency. It's there everywhere. It's there in the office. It's there at our home. It's there within us. It's easy to complain because the aggression that you come out with, it becomes very easy for us to complain. But how to tackle it? You need to understand and listen more. I think the brand has to listen more. What kind of things that a brand, the consumer is saying, and try and be very honest with the consumers. See, don't sugarcoat things. Don't try and mislead them, because if you mislead them, they have a bigger weapon at hand, which is Google or a Google search or technology. They will just do a Google search, put a screenshot, and right into your face, you'll be gone. So the brand has to really be very, very honest about what they offer. And of course, you don't have to say that, yes, I'm a sugary brand. I provide sugar. I don't give healthy stuff. Hypothetically taking an example as a fruit juice, because Real as a brand, that's our brand. That I work for. It gets a lot of negative reviews every day, but we try and solve it as much as possible through connecting with consumers, not only online but also offline. So people need to see. Ultimately, you have to be empathetic towards your consumers. If you don't, then they will take you for a ride, and you can't ignore them because they have the power right now. They have the phone in their hand. So you really cannot, the brand cannot take that risk of ignoring stuff. If, for example, there are 10 people who are saying कि आपका brand sugary hai, launch a campaign wherein you're educating people about what sugary is and what not. But be honest with people, because the power still lies in their hands. So I think first, of course, you listen more, and secondly, be honest and be empathetic towards your consumers. These three things are very important to tackle any negative situation, and be very wary of when to intervene. You don't have to intervene with 10 comments, people saying your brand is bad, your brand is sugary or whatever it is. You need to be very aware of what the trend has been. If the trend has been for the last, let's say 2 months, there are sort of 10 comments are on bad things, on complaints, fine, because that's a usual setup. That's a usual thing. But if the queries have literally shot up, you need to make a track of it, keep a track of it, and you need to make sure that there is a campaign around it, how you would want to, spin it around and give it a positive narrative in terms of the communication, and rather than, dissing the users and saying, I don't care.
Siddharth, what do you think about this Fair and Lovely controversy on the net?
Sure. So see, Fair and Lovely controversy was always there. अभी हमारे हाथ में phone आ गया है, that's why we are more powerful to share our views. See, as I talked about the tribe, right? There's always a tribe who will talk about these things. So see, that's what I personally feel, that every marketer has to understand that you can't please everyone, right? There will always be people who will definitely have a lot of opinions about you, and it's vital to also acknowledge that and move on. That you can't please everyone. From this particular controversy, if you were to speak to me on that, I think online it's a very opinionated matter, but still India wins. They sell a lot of fairness creams. The fairness bit will never go right now, at least for quite few years. It will not go because it's seeped into our it's seeped into our culture that way. And when I talk about culture, it's literally when a girl is coming to a boy saying that the boy is dark or the girl is dark. Those kind of biases we already have. Those are existing. So it's a good step for the brand to take from Fair and Lovely to a whatever XYZ name they wanted to take up, Glow and Lovely and whatever. It's good for a statement making, but India will still sell a lot of things, of these kind of things, because we have inner biases. But it's a good step. I think it's a good step, at least towards making progress in terms of society. And that's where I say that a lot of films, a lot of ads, a lot of brands become so relevant, relevant to people that they actually carry the culture. For example, Truly Madly and Tinder and all these places, they've literally taken those cultures to another level, and this is how as a society will grow. So from a brand perspective, decent move, I think, in this right space. As a culture, we'll, I think, grow together. Brand definitely will, I don't think will suffer from this, but I don't work for the brand, so I won't be able to gauge in terms of what the results are, but it will still sell, I feel. But it's a good step towards making a good move towards a better society, I think.
Thank you.
Siddharth, Archana this side, one question to you. You have given us a lot of examples about B2C marketing.
Sure.
Which in your opinion are some of the best B2B campaigns that you have seen on digital?
So see, one of the best campaigns that I've seen on digital is from a B2B perspective is Samsung. Samsung does a lot of good stuff on digital with respect to their first of all query management, secondly the kind of communication that they throw on digital. And if you remember, I don't know if you've seen or not, but there was this ad wherein a person, basically a customer care executive, goes to a very remote area, and that was a film. Goes to a very remote area and he fixes stuff, and of course it was wrapped in a very emotional sort of quotient. But Samsung does it really well. I have a few friends who work at Samsung, so I'm aware of the fact that their query management system and the addressal system is very strong. So plus they have a lot of institutional sales and institutional programs that they do, the advocacy programs. They're very strong on that front if you talk offline, but if you talk online, of course Samsung wins it because they've been very vocal about how to address the system. They navigate their queries and grievances at the right places. A good example is the moment that query comes in, they try and direct the user not on digital but offline, so that all the banter doesn't happen online. It's taken off to like an off center or a call center sort of a place. So I think Samsung does it really well.
Thank you.
Siddharth, you had a question from somebody who had written to you earlier regarding her clinic, if you remember.
Yes. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was that she has started a clinic and she is now getting onto social media. How should she attract more people to her social media pages?
Okay, definitely Facebook likes won't work. See, social advertising is no misnomer right now because there's nothing social about it. You all pay for it. Facebook, you pay for it. Twitter, you pay for it. LinkedIn, you pay for it. Everything you pay for it. But within the current context of what she's asked, I'll try and answer that. See, as I said, that we need to know what ticks our consumers. There are a lot of brands and categories which are very advocacy led, which come from, for example, let's say baby care, right? Baby care, you can't push down someone's throat saying that, please buy my product. I'm better. It doesn't have this. It doesn't have that. But it's driven by majorly आपकी मम्मी क्या कहती है, आपकी दादी ने क्या कहा है, what's best for them, what's best for the kids, and of course asking your peers, asking your colleagues or the ones who've already delivered in the past, and then making your choices basis your understanding. So I think we need to be very wary of what the consumers want and what ticks them. So if, for example, let's say in this particular scenario, if she connects with a lot of people and she takes a lot of testimonials from people, right? A lot of advocacy-led marketing will help her because you're getting into someone's space, you're getting into someone's mouth. You're a doctor, right? And it's a very personal choice that you make. Doctors, that a very personal choice that you make. Because you would want to be very, very, you want to know your doctor really well. You want your doctor to know you well, right? So it's a very personalized form of advertising. It doesn't come at running a 20-seconder. It won't influence. So if she wants to build a base, if she wants to ensure that, she wants to earn more consumers, I think the word of mouth marketing for her is really important. And getting the content not from her side, but from the users themselves. Post more content, get your reviews across your digital space, which includes your Facebook, which includes your Google reviews, which includes your smaller pieces like Quora also, which includes your Instagram, right? So, and every platform serves its own purpose. For example, I go on Google and I search, and on the right-hand side, if I see a Google review, or probably if I go on Facebook, I see a content from a 28-year-old saying that, this doctor is fantastic because not only she took care of my whatever tooth or etc., but she also made sure that I felt so much better, so much comfortable and at ease. So I think for this kind of a category, we need to understand the category. The category is very personalized. So I think the advocacy and word of mouth marketing will work better for her, I think.
I think Rajan Nair has a question on ethics. Rajan, can you please go ahead?
Hi, Rajan here. I recently read a report in the Pune newspapers that a few companies, digital companies, were creating fake likes, and they were arrested. I just want to know what is your opinion on this? Why was it considered wrong?
See, it's got a very long story, but I'll cut it short. See, the moment you get into fake followers, so these companies operate on getting people fake followers. They try and tell you that yes, we'll give you these many followers, 1,000, 1 million, or 2 million, or 10 million, and probably make some fake accounts, make fake influencers.
Yeah, I agree with that. My question was slightly one additional point. We all know that Amitabh Bachchan does not use Lal Tel or Binani copper or cement, but when he's advertising it, we tend to believe in it. So that's also fake, right? So what is wrong with fake likes? Everybody knows fake likes can be purchased. So under what law were they arresting this, and why would you think that it is unethical? I'm still not able to understand that.
So I'm just arriving to that. Why? Because see, the moment you get into fake followers, it creates also a lot of fake personas around people. You pay people, and there are a lot of it doesn't come under any law. See, cyber laws right now in India are very weak, especially from a social media perspective, from a digital perspective. They're weak. They're not strong, honestly, right now. We've not defined our borders right now. We don't know exactly what's wrong, what's not. This is the case. I'm also reading for the first time, right? And these are the kind of companies they're already doing it. Now the repercussions probably, of course, might be in the space of getting a fake person promoting fake things. An XYZ person, let's say Siddharth, I have 1 million followers and I've already bought them all the followers. Nobody knows me. I've not established myself. I'm not Amitabh Bachchan. Amitabh Bachchan still has a lot of credibility right now in India. I mean, he's seen as one of the best stars, right? I mean, we all know that yes, they're getting paid for it, and it's also a fake life. But that's how social and digital works. I mean, people know, yes, of course, I won't be consuming a Red Bull every day, but that's there. I mean, that's out there. We all know it. Yes, Instagram is a fake life for most of us, because we only post content which is true to us, which looks good to us, right? So again, from a law perspective, we are not very strong on that front right now. We are still finding our spaces. We are still finding loopholes, and this is one of the loopholes. And I can tell you 10 of them right now, because there are a lot of people who have a nexus of only creating content and also promoting it, and also telling people, you go and post it. There are a lot of things that we're still figuring out, honestly.
Number check.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I think, Siddharth, this has been the longest that we have had so far as far as Open Minds is concerned. So thank you very much for this. And I must say that one thing which I really liked is that you clearly mentioned that digital medium is one more medium. It is not a different thing. It is just a medium, and you have to treat it differently. So now, may I request Manupriya to please propose the vote of thanks.
Siddharth, thank you so very much for accepting to speak on Open Minds. Frankly, the points that you have shared, I quite agree with almost all of them. Today, we don't Google things, we also Zoom today. So it's not, we have created brand out of Zoom, which we did not even know of about 6 months back.
Right.
So each and every point was quite relevant, and the 4 C's that you have shared, I'm very sure that all of the content we have a lot of takeaways from today's session. Thank you so very much for accepting this and speaking on the session today. It was a pleasure to have you over, and also to all the participants today who've come there, who spent their Saturday mornings with us. So thank you so very much. We look forward to having you all in the next session as well.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Turab. Thank you for this invitation. Thank you, ma'am. And thanks to all the participants and attendees. It was I hope I was able to bring something to the table.
And there is one small unique thing which will have to be done. Since you are the host of this meeting, you will have to end the meeting. I can't end it. This is something very unique. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Siddharth.